to elders past, present and emerging. There's a few announcements, councillors. The first one is to acknowledge the sensational response to last Tuesday night's massive storm that hit our city. The response from city staff, Western Power, SES volunteers and other agencies was overwhelming. It was a very courageous thing for those people to go out on that evening, whilst there was strong winds, to assist people in our community who were quite distressed and quite severely impacted by the storm. So thank you very much to all of those. We also, in the last day or so, I've had a phone call from the federal member for Forest, Nola Moreno, just asking how the city's progressing. And this morning I had a discussion with Don Punch, the member for Bunbury, regarding homelessness. So we've had a fair bit to do and discuss about that particular issue. Thanks, Greg. I think we're all here. Yep. So, declaration of interest, councillors. I have declared an impartiality interest. The item that Councillor Kozisek declared an impartiality interest has been withdrawn. Are there any further declarations of interest, councillors? Thank you. Can I have someone move the suspension of the relevant standing orders?
Yeah, happy to do that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Plum, seconder.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll do that. Councillor Giles.
Councillor Giles, all in favour, please vote yes. Everybody voting with your little tabs. Thank you. Keep going.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, my tab is not showing up.
Just say yes or no.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Steck.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Giles, I can't find mine in.
Yes. Councillor Yip, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Kozisek, yes, I'm sorry, I can't remember how to get to the little voting tab.
Chat, I just found it.
It's under participants.
Yeah.
And then the bottom line.
Oh, there it is. Yes, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah. Can we all just tick on that, please, so that our minute taker can record?
I still haven't found mine.
Me neither. It's not coming up.
Did you click on
participant?
participants?
Yes, I did.
Down the bottom, if your screen's full,
Okay,
it's
found
down
it.
the bottom, you sort of hover your mouse.
Yep, there we go.
Good. Yeah, good on you. Okay, that's carried. Thank you unanimously. Thanks, councillors. Can I have someone move the confirmation of the previous minutes of the previous council meeting?
I so move, Mr. Mayor. Councillor
Cleary, second up.
Councillor Steele can second.
Councillor
Councillor
Steele.
Steele.
Thank you. All in favour, please vote. Greg, you'll have to get rid of these previous votes. Good. Yep. Councillor Smith. Councillor Steele. Yep. Councillor Steele, you're going to vote?
I've got a thumbs up.
Mr. Mayor, I clicked yes.
Thumbs up will do. Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Oh, here you go. Sorry. Is it going to go through now?
Yes. Okay, and just to receive the minutes of the Bunbury Events Advisory Group meeting, someone move and receive that.
I'm quite happy to move that. Councillor Steele.
I'll second.
Seconder.
Councillor Steck.
Councillor Steck, thank you. All those in favour, please indicate by voting. Councillor Brown, Councillor Yip, thank you. That's carried unanimously. Thanks very much. So we have requests from Mr. Mark Mazza to speak to item 11.42. can we just get an indication of council's happy with that? All in favour, just yes, vote again, thanks. Yeah, that's approved. And we also have a request from Mr. Fitzgerald of TCON Australia to speak to the same item. All those in favour, please vote yes. Yeah, that's approved as well. Thank you, councillors. We move on. So, dealing with tonight's agenda, coming out so far is 11.4.2, which is the retrospective development application for the front fence. And we also need an absolute majority for 11.51, which is the tender. Are there any other items that anyone wishes to deal with in detail?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we haven't got it up on the screen. The agenda bits. I've got mine in hard copy, but I haven't got it.
No, we're just dealing with item 10 at the moment, Councillor McCleary. Do you have any other items that you wish to raise? Anybody?
Mr. Mayor, can I just confirm that the that 11.11 is withdrawn?
Yes, that's
Yes.
confirmed, Councillor
Thank
Giles.
you. Yeah.
We all okay? Can I have someone move the balance then, please?
Happy to move for you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hayward, thank you. Second up.
Councillor Turner.
Councillor Turner, thank you. All those in favour, please indicate. That's carried unanimously. Councillor, yep. Yep, all good. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Right, let's go to 11.4.2. Greg, would you invite Mr. Mazza out of the waiting room?
Will do.
And you'll control the 5 minutes.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Happy
Thank
to do
you.
that. So, Mark, you should be in the meeting now.
Okay, yeah. So,
okay, Mark, welcome along. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation to council, so please go ahead.
okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to give you this deputation. Look, it's my understanding that the initial complaint was not made because the complainant wanted to see into the Drummond's front yard, or even that the wall was not aesthetically pleasing in any way, but rather the complainant wanted to build a similar wall on his own property and only use the Drummond's wall as an example, because even though one of many walls in the area, it's the most recently constructed. I do not agree with council's heavy-handed approach to such trivial matters, causing angst to good citizens who only recently chose Bunbury as their dream destination to live out the rest of their lives. This does not put our good city light for prospective residents wishing to build or live in our city. So I suppose the is that there is a precedent with other walls in the area, and I feel like the council's probably been a bit unreasonable with it. Well, mainly because what right does anybody else have to see in the front yard of anybody else's house if the owner doesn't want that to happen? I know them personally, obviously, and Rose, the mother, is an elderly lady. She wanted to have a bit of privacy in a little courtyard in the front of her home where she could enjoy the afternoon sun. So I just feel that it's a bit of a trivial matter to really be hounding these people and leaving a bitter taste in their mouth when they've only recently moved here from Tasmania. That's about it for my deputation.
Thank you, Mark. Is Mr. Fitzgerald available?
He is, Mr. Mayor. I'll bring him in.
Thank you.
So Mr. Fitzgerald should be in the meeting now, Mr. Mayor.
Gary, can you hear me? Gary Fitzgerald? I don't think he's there, Greg.
his microphone just might be taking a second.
It was, thank you. You bet it's on. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, gentlemen, councillors.
Yeah, go ahead, Gary. You got 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Councillors, my name for the record, Gary Fitzgerald. I'm Director of Tech on Australia. We're Town Planners Building Surveyors. And we're representing Mr. and Mrs. Drummond in regards to item 11.4.2 on tonight's agenda. Councillor, I'm speaking against the officer's recommendation as presented to you this evening. The recommendation essentially refers to three concerns: non-compliance with deemed to comply provisions of the R codes, inconsistency with the city's local laws, and the proposal will compromise the visual amenity of the existing street. Councillor, we don't think that that's actually quite correct, in as much that, and our presentation this evening would hope to just sort of explain that a little bit to you. I've provided a series of slides, a little bit difficult under the circumstance, Councillor, so I'll refer to them as numbers if I can. I should have numbered them. First slide, number 2, I should say, rather than the introduction, shows you effectively a site plan on the top left. On the right-hand side of the page, it gives a bit of an aerial which shows some view corridors and gives an indication of what the frontage of the building looks like from the street. The next series of about 4 slides, councillors, gives, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's just a view, including a nighttime view of actually what the structure looks like. And it presents well to the street. And as I said, the argument that we believe is relevant to put up is that it's not an argument at a professional level on the deemed to comply provisions of the R codes. We believe that this is an argument under the design principles. We did put an argument up under an interpretation of 4.24, I beg your pardon, under the R codes, which refers to the total vertical surface of the fencing. Look, I think that without labouring that point, councillors, we believe that there is an argument there that could, in actual fact, be interpreted as complying with the deemed to comply provisions. But as I said, I won't labour that. I'll focus more on the fact that I think deemed to comply, this structure should be approved. In essence, as I flick through those slides, if you've got to them, and there's a couple of, I suppose, important ones that I'd refer to, and perhaps if you go to the last slide that has 2 photos on it, councillors, what I'd refer to is the setting in which this structure sits. Now, we're talking about a very wide streetscape. We're talking about setbacks which are well set back from each other. So you've got immediately a built environment which allows for a separation and which doesn't impact on amenity by virtue of its separation between the adjoining structures. Bearing in mind that our key elements in this particular consideration under design principles are impact on amenity and impact on streetscape, essentially. Now, we need to bear in mind that this has been advertised, and we've got 22 submissions that are supporting the proposal, which are immediate and surrounding landowners. And we've got 1 submission, which, as I understand personally, is not within the street itself. So quite clearly, if there's a suggestion that there's an impact on the amenity of surrounding landowners, then in actual fact, the landowners are telling you that there's not. And we're certainly telling you that when you look at this structure, it presents very well. It's got expansive glazing, notwithstanding the fence. It's got a view from the street, which you can see quite clearly how it sits. There's no surveillance issues. Just bear with me 1 second, councillors. It's the existing, as I said, you've got existing glazing incorporating the upper story. So when you look at the street, you're not seeing a house behind a street, behind a fence. You're basically seeing quite an impressive structure, and it's not blocked off in any way. As I said, it's set back, so it's not out of scale in human scale to the street, so it doesn't impact in any way in the context of its built form there. And essentially, councillors, as I said, the issue is about the amenity and how it sits within the street. And when you look at the front of that building, it's quite clear that it's open and quite clearly relates to the street in a way which under design principles could be approved. So I think I'm getting close to the 5 minutes. And what I'd also say, Council, there's a couple of things that have been raised, and that is, and should be raised. One is that the lower portion on the right-hand side of your page is in actual fact opening onto an outdoor living area. This house is shared in accommodation by parents, a parent of Mr. and Mrs. The owners in regards to shared accommodation, and that front building opens into open area. So it is needed to have some privacy, bearing in mind that council has a local planning policy which restricts heights of fences at the rear. So in effect, it's difficult to get some private open space in regards to the design considerations that are in place. The second issue that I'd just quickly like to raise is that I think it's been suggested that the owners have done something sort of contrary and perhaps maliciously in intent. If anything, councillors, what the owners have done is quite simply made an error of an interpretation, and that is that they looked around the environment in which their house was built, and they saw what they thought what they were building to be something very consistent with the surrounding development, perhaps better than perhaps some of the design that's in the area. So they built it. Yes, they realised they made a mistake, and they were the first ones to say we need to sort this out. But I would just add that their intention was, if anything, an error in interpretation of legislation. There was no malice in what they were doing, and it was based on what they thought would be more acceptable in the surrounding area. So, councillors, in summary, what I would say is that you have the ability under legislation, under ARCO's provisions to vary. You have the ability under your town planning scheme. There is nothing to say that if it's suggested that a precedent being set has any relevance. Planning law doesn't recognise precedents. It's on each individual case, and it's on its merit of each individual proposal. And we would believe that I believe that this is in keeping with its setting, and it complies with the deemed to comply provisional design, principles of the ARCOdes in regards to impact and amenity on streetscape and surrounding development. Thank you very much, councillor, for your time.
Thanks, Gary. So, councillors, we have an executive recommendation there. Can someone is prepared to move it?
Mr Mayor, I will move it.
Councillor Giles, is a seconder? I'll second it. Councillor Giles, before I invite you to speak, can I just ask Mr Barba to inform the council of fairly recent instances where we've had a similar matter brought before council and council has refused retrospective approval, and also I think there's 3 instances where the staff actually resolved to bring front fences into conformity with the criteria. Would you mind just running through that fairly briefly?
Through you, Mr Mayor. There have been 2 instances of a refusal. So lot 200 Stirling Street in February 2020 and lot 3 Blair Street in May of 2016 was refused. There was also an approval by council in Taunton Street in April of 2017. We get quite a few inquiries with people wanting to build walls, and we advise them what the ARCOdes say. So generally, when they then put in an application, it complies. We have had a few instances where we've had applications for solid fencing, and the approach we generally take is we contact the applicant, we advise them what the ARCOdes say, we try and work with them to see if they can make modifications to the design to get a compliant fence. And in the majority of instances, that is what occurs. They modify the design and then it's approved under delegation. Thanks.
Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Whilst I'm very sympathetic with the builders and the owners, I think this is an instance where they were well informed at the planning stage when getting a building permit that this fence was not compliant, but that still went ahead. Some of the fences that are similar in the same area were built quite a while ago, and the regulations were different at the time they did comply. I do think that we have a duty to uphold the regulations, because otherwise we could open the damn wall with lots and lots of people saying, well, you let them do it, so why can't you let us? I also think that it's quite a simple, a relatively simple matter for them to resubmit an application with some design changes, which would then comply. And I think we talked last week about the fact that the wall does not actually enclose an outdoor living area as it states in the Act. If it was an actual patio or something like that, then it might, but it doesn't. So we can't even look at it in that regard. So as I say, although I'm sympathetic to the owners, I do think that in this instance they have been well warned, and I think we need to apply the regulations as they stand. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Giles. And just for my contribution, councillors, look, I'm looking at this purely as a town planning matter, nothing else. And we have the views of our professional staff, town planning staff, that say that this is not in compliance. And I greatly respect Mr. Fitzgerald's expertise and experience and qualifications. And there's a difference of opinion between two very astute people. But in this instance, I'm going to support the town planning officers of the City of Bunbury. And as I've said earlier, I've looked at the previous matters that have been brought forward, and for sheer consistency, I'm going to support this executive recommendation. So, is there a speaker against?
Councillor.
I just have a very quick question, please, Mayor.
Councillor Steele.
It's just regarding the gate that will maybe go there. Is it the picture that Mr. Fitzgerald has given us with the like the see-through barred gate, or is it going to be a solid gate? If I just have that clarification, that'd be great, please.
Mr. Barba.
Mr. Mayor, I believe it is a visually permeable gate.
Thank you.
See-through.
Thank you.
Councillor Turner, I think, wanted to speak against.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. When you look at the submissions, there's 22 submissions in favour of the fencing being approved and only one against. If you go for a drive through the area, you'll see many similar fences with the same height and even practically the same design. All it does is add to the standard of the overall area. The quality is very good. If you also, I understand that the council staff have need to reduce the fencing due to non-compliance, but we need to make these types of things easier for people who want to build and invest in our community or in our shire. And most residents nowadays, they just want privacy and also security. And if you look at the back fences, they open up onto the waterway, so there isn't that privacy out the back, whereas they can sit out the front and have a barbecue and enjoy their life. I wouldn't recommend it in areas like Kerry Park or something like that. It just wouldn't suit. But when you look at the area that they're in, it works good. And I would advise anybody else any fellow councillors to vote against the executive recommendations. Thank you.
Is there a further speaker for?
Mr. Mayor, just a question, if I may.
Councillor Hayward.
If this is voted down, will there be an opportunity for an alternative motion to be put to approve, or how will we manage that?
Yeah, I'd entertain that. Yep. If you wanted to give notice that you were going to move that way.
Yes, I will be moving that way, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Is there another speaker for? Councillor Giles to close.
No, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I couldn't find my button quick enough.
You want to speak for?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I'm very sad because this is a beautiful piece of architecture that's been built there. The fence suits, it's aesthetically pleasing, it's balanced, but I really have to support what the laws and the policies are for our city And it really irks me to do this, but I will be voting for the motion simply for that reason. And it's not simple, really. It gets really complicated if we don't have consistency. So it's with a heavy heart, and they've done a beautiful job, that I have to vote for this motion. Thank you.
Further speakers?
Mayor, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Steck. Look, to be honest, council itself has delegated authority. We are the governing body, so we can approve or not approve any development application that comes before council. I concur with Councillor Turner. There are 22 responses in favour. When you look at design principles, the streetscape is very good. It fits well with all of the other amenities in the area. It upgrades the area. The actual fence, I think, is very consistent with the design of the house, considering the size of the house. And I think it actually upgrades the street. So I would urge all councillors to vote this down and go with the next motion coming from Councillor Hayward.
Further speaker 4. Councillor Giles to close. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As other people have said, it is quite a very, very difficult decision, but I think the thing that swayed me was mostly that on the 10th of January 2019, they knew that that fence that they had planned was not compliant. They were told that. And I think that really is the turning point for me, that I think that the builder deliberately did not take that advice and went ahead with a non-compliant fence. So yes, I agree with all the other points, but I think that we really do need to uphold the regulations in this instance when there is really no mitigating circumstances. It wasn't a mistake, it wasn't anything else, it was just defiance of the actual building permit. So I would like to see this, the motion supported. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favour, please vote yes. Those against, vote no. The motion is carried 7-6. Councillors, we have a tender now and we need an absolute majority, and I should close this to the general public. So can I have somebody move that we go behind closed doors to deal with this tender?
Councillor Steele.